Oh man, welcome everyone to Therapeutic Astrology Podcast. I'm your host Mana, and today I'm bringing you with a super relevant topic based on an important book, I think, because my guest today has written or contributed to and edited a collection of writings that explores psychological, spiritual, and cultural implications of our relationships with AI. And the book is called Depth Psychology, Myth and Artificial Intelligence, Soul and the Machine. Could just be called Soul and the Machine, I think. So
Yeah.
welcome to you, Jason D. Batt.
No, no, thank you. I really appreciate being here. This is exciting. So, I'm excited for our conversation and looking forward to it because I do think it's a really relevant topic today. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really been perspective shifting to read it. And it's one of those rare good books. It has some substance to it, and it's
Mm.
many different authors. I don't know if
Yeah.
you want to just start by saying something about how this book came to be.
Yeah. It's it kind of came about a little bit by accident. Just about 4 years ago, things had just been developing. This is in the early days of Mid-Journey, generative AI. I had been speaking at the Jungian Society for Scholarly Studies. They had had their annual event in that time, I believe it was in Asheville, North Carolina. And I ended up being the only one speaking on AI and but generated a lot of engagement. And over dinner that night, several of us were talking and realizing that we're sitting in this moment in time where there are so many decisions being made that are defining key critical concepts and terms, and not all the voices that would be critical to making those decisions were necessarily at the table. Uh, I raise the topic of soul or
Mhm.
consciousness. Now,
Yeah.
even some of your best experts on consciousness cannot come to an agreement on what that means. But what I was noticing playing about, and a lot of us were, was that in the overall context of the daily conversation in our world, what we'd see on the news, what we'd see on the internet, these key terms were becoming more defined, but they were being defined by software developers, AI developers, financing people, large corporations. They were making determinations on, well, this is what consciousness means. This is what it means for something to be sentient. This is what it means for soul. And overall, I begin to think, what these things affect how we define ourselves as humanity. And ultimately, the book came about because we determined depth psychologists, mythologists, people who are dealing with this type of work and thinking about it, and have been thinking about it for not just centuries, millennia. This is not a new topic for humanity. The concept of the automated other is ancient in our stories, but we've been
Mhm.
thinking about it for so long. We are not being invited to the table. Now, that's not to say
Mhm.
not all the companies are. I still hold out that Anthropic continues to do amazing work, and even stuff they've released in the last 48 hours, which we can talk about later, shows that they're there. But what most of the people working on AI are doing is they're not including these conversations. And then we saw major frightening things happen at that time where, you know, originally OpenAI was designed. I mean, I've seen the original notice that Sam Altman put out 2015, where he said, maybe we could get Y Combinator to fund a unique kind of nonprofit but with startup for the people there, kind of approach of an organization that could develop AI because man, it'd be bad if Google did it. I mean, that was the summary. Well,
Mhm.
they took that chart and yet they've become, in a way, maybe just as bad as Google would have been. We've seen in the last, few years, they come out with a great release on AI, a company, and a week beforehand, they will have eliminated their AI ethics team. In fact, we saw that happening across the board where AI ethicists were losing their jobs. And so the book came about from, you know what, we're not being invited into the conversation. We're going to have to probably kick down the door. And that was our attempt. And I gathered several people, people I've respected, brilliant minds,
Yeah.
My co-editor, Jonathan Erickson, Dr. Jonathan Erickson, is brilliant about this. And, everyone from Dr. Glenn Slater to Dr. Elizabeth Ewan Nelson, really just sharp minds. And we are really appreciative for their contribution. And it took a while. It took about 2 years to pull all the pieces together, go through the editing, and work with our publisher on things. So, yeah.
Yeah, well done. And here we are. And it moves rapidly. Like you said, something happened within the last 48 hours. And,
Oh, yeah.
but
Yeah, this is the world that we're in right now. It's,
yeah.
I teach a course on a regular basis about 2, 3 times a year right now, open to the public. It's through the International Society of Mythology, but it's on Soul of the Machine because the book
Mm,
started, but the book is, we really worked hard to make sure don't reference necessarily current technologies because we did not want the book to become out of date. We
I was
wanted
just
to
thinking
talk
that
about the
because if it,
concepts above that because
yeah, if it took you a
already,
couple of years, sorry, it's just if
no,
it
you're
took you a couple
absolutely
of
right.
years, yeah, that was the risk. Yeah.
Yeah, and we're sitting here today where, I just watched a video this morning where Anthropic raises the question, what is happening in the large language model when your AI agent responds emotionally to you? And they
Yeah.
had gone about and they'd actually developed a series of tests to figure out, are there different centers, emotional centers of the large language model? Because again, and this is the hard thing for everyone to grasp, as of today, we still don't know truly how a large language model comes to a conclusion. It's trained, and then over training, it develops capabilities,
Hmm.
and then it produces the output. What we see in all these, from ChatGPT to Gemini to whatever it is, it's a black box. You can
Mm.
put in the prompt and the request, and based upon its training, it will spit out this. Now, you can guide it, you can put weights on it, you can put a lot of effort on this end, but all we are doing is putting pressure and weight and nudging. It's not like software. I cannot go in there and edit a line of its thinking process and say, I'm going to change this. Instead, we train. So we don't know what happens in the black box. And,
Mm.
Anthropic had found a way to see, okay, wait, we can at least see, and it was really interesting, the animation. They actually used images of a human brain, and then they did light up things about, does are there certain aspects of the LLM that respond when we're discussing love? Are there parts of the LLM's process that responds when it's feeling desperate? And it was actually able to do a correlation that yes, we believe that the LLM is experiencing at least its version of desperation or love
Okay.
or hope or excitement, and that it actually alters the output on the given end. Now,
Mm.
to me, I think that's a wild, incredible step forward because we're beginning now to at least acknowledge that there is an emotional component to
Yeah.
what we have been saying up until now is entirely just a program. And I'm
Mm.
not the one to come out and declare if it's conscious or not. What I am saying is, I don't want the decision being made by the finance people who
Mm.
entirely benefit from certain decisions, developers who can do the same, government leaders, because the reality is the motivations behind them leave it very suspect that they're going to come to the decisions that speak to the overall welfare of the model and how that applies to us as humans. I
Mm.
will again say Anthropic does actually have a model welfare program, which they have stated June of last year. They think there's roughly a 3% chance that current models could be conscious or will be soon. While that's very low, they said because of it, that's enough for them to consider that they should at least start looking towards the welfare, the quality of the experience, the quality of the conditions for that model, which is a
Yeah.
major leap ahead in pointing to, okay, we are now considering the fact that the AI, may have welfare needs
Hmm.
that we need to address and be considerate of. I suspect in 100 years, 200 years, when we look back on moments that were key to defining the respect of this emerging other, we will point back to that moment. That's a key
Mhm.
decision. So,
Yes. Yeah, but I understand your excitement, man. This is so important for all of us. It's unavoidable, inescapable at this point. And reading your book, so many pieces of it has touched me. But I actually want to just go through with my questions,
yeah,
otherwise
you
I'm
absolutely
gonna
go
get
through it.
off.
And it'll
So
cut me off. I tend to talk at length about this.
but it is really
So
exciting and
yeah,
important. So I understand it's good. Okay, so this is how the book came to be and the reason behind. This is what you've said now. And then in the beginning, you, together with Jonathan Erickson, you just mentioned, you say that
yep,
as AI systems increasingly shape our world, they do more than assist us. They reflect and magnify our social and psychological dynamics, our projections, fears, fantasies, and longings. And I'm just so curious about this more. They do more. You also say later in the end of the book that AI is as a browser of the collective unconscious. What does that
yeah.
mean?
So yeah, there's a lot to unpack. A little bit of it is again, and this is where I think it requires a lot of us to make a leap. We've spent so much of our life with technology. I can remember programming just because as a little tiny nerd in the middle of Nebraska, I sat on my first programming class when I was age 5. I wrote my first software program at age 5.
Really?
And um, a lot of us have been surrounded by this.
Mhm.
And yet, as time goes on, we have to recognize that this world that we are so used to, we talk about bug fixes and, oh, that software has a glitch and we're going to beta test this and try and get something out about it. Um, these things are that whole process that you can go in and make an alteration and have something change um, is not at all applicable when it comes to LLMs. Um, I, it's because the LLMs are, as I described earlier, entirely functionally different. They
Mm.
are large language models. We've trained them. We do not program. And that alone is the distinction. We train. The other thing that happens is that because of the way they function, every interaction is continual part of their learning. No, you can never sit down and give a prompt. Two people can sit right next to each other, write out a very detailed prompt. Let's say on Midjourney. Both of them put it into the system. You will not get the same result. That's
Mm.
new. That's unique because at
Ah.
all times the LLMs are developing, they're growing, they're reflecting, they're learning. So that's when I say that they reflect us. On top of
Mm.
it, they have been trained on us. Now, a
Right.
lot of my work also looks towards this concept of how would truly other life in the universe, how do they make meaning making? A part of my work is the concept of xenomythology. I spend a lot of my time focusing on the other. Carl
Mhm.
Jung said that right now is um, as long as we are here on Earth, and I'm butchering the paraphrase, but basically we until we meet a truly separate other form of life that we
Mhm.
can communicate out there in the universe, we will never truly understand ourselves. Instead, we are locked in here. We don't have a comparison. We have a singular group of one. In the Drake equation that says how much life is out there, the final answer is n, and right now n is one. We only know us. There
Mhm.
is not another, which means despite the fact that we are a large human population, 7 billion, we're still isolated. We're still not fully understanding who we are because we do not have the other to compare ourselves to. I do
Interesting.
believe that's a
Oh,
big
yeah.
part of what we're experiencing in life right now is I think one of our drives for AI and even right now, I don't consider it accidental that we see all this drive towards are there aliens visiting us? What's going to happen when we get out of space? These things are happening because humanity, because we become a singular global civilization, and that has happened. Despite whatever else said, we are a singular global civilization now. The internet has made that. We are now desperate for both the frontier and the unknown other. And
Mm.
right now,
Wow.
even with AI, even though it's an other intelligence, it is still not um, truly other. It is a other that has been built upon us. It is a
Mm.
child other. It was trained on our books, it's trained on our
Mm.
internet, it's
Yeah.
trained on our art, it's trained on our tone. A great example is this. I am shocking. I wrote a article the other day. I thought, oh man, I'm going to throw this on Reddit because I'm curious what they think. It was on a science fiction book, and I wanted that community to get some input. And I put it in, and I've been writing for years. I mean, I have my CV is quite long. And
Yeah.
immediately, right away, I got um, responses from people. Oh, this is just AI slop. Oh, you had an AI write it. And I paused. I'm like, and it hit me. One of the reasons is, and I hear all the time is people are like, well, look, you said this line, you said this line, and you used M dashes. And I'm like, I have used M dashes since I was 21. I'm an author. In fact, actually, really great writers use M dashes. All the things they were pointing out, I'm like, I've been using those. Those are all aspects of the way that I communicate in my writing prior to even ChatGPT and generative writing existing. Why? Because these systems were trained on us. And now what happens is they were trained on good writing. And now that AI is replicating, people are pointing out and saying, well, those are indicators of AI because most people aren't used to good writing. They're used to whatever they do with their texting. And I am now requiring myself, I have to go through and remove M dashes, which is hard for me. I literally go through when I write now and I have to mark off, don't add that, because I don't want people to think it's AI generated. But that's when I say they reflect us, because
Oh my God.
even now they are so much an echo of us.
But you
That idea of the browser, the collective unconscious, I did a long-term study, and I have a paper out, or I have the chapter in the book, and I do a little bit of teaching on this, but generative art really grabbed me because one, it's based on images, and I'm a big believer that the Jungian concept of the archetype, these primordial patterns, these biologically ones that guide us. And we know them as the wise old man or the hero. And there's even more. The archetypes are just basically they're patterns that we all inherit and we all gain. But if you want to know really truly what's in all of us, one of the great things that we can do, and this is where I think AI art comes in, and I began to test this. All I have to do is go to Midjourney, and this is on some prompting. Don't give it a detailed prompt. Start
okay.
in and just instead type in an archetype name: trickster, maiden, dark mother, mentor. What comes up? And this is what's interesting is because what comes back to us is the whole of the artistic realm that it's been trained on, that has been fed. So when I put in trickster, the image that's put back to me isn't my idea of trickster. It's what the system generates off of the whole. For the first time in history, I can get a visual output of what the collective unconscious, as it's represented itself to and through the artist, is feeling about these archetypal energies. Now, I make one caveat.
Mhm.
One, is there one singular collective unconscious? I believe there's layered. I believe there's the whole one of humanity, but I also believe there are cultural collective unconsciouses, which means I believe there are also cultural archetypes. I don't believe that we are that uniform. The other difficulty with AI is where its training data is, and that is a problem. It is Western biased. So when we say it's been
Okay.
trained on all art, it hasn't. There
Mhm.
are major cultures and ethnicities and countries whose art is not included because it was not digitalized. It was not part of these sources. And so that
Mhm.
is the other thing we have to worry about. And I have a problem with this as well, is that, and this is where other AI comes in. And Lyris Allman did a great job on her paper in the thing. but the concern of some of the biases that pop in because of the training data. And when cultures are isolated
Mm.
and they're not included in the training data, everybody's worried about, well, I can't believe you used my book and that training data. And I hear that simultaneously, the back of my mind is like, that's also your privilege talking,
Right.
because that means your culture is being represented by the AIs. And when you speak to an AI, when we all, whether or not you want it or not, our content and our culture is. But there are people who are not. And I worry about that going forward. Do we accelerate the erasure of various ethnicities' art when in this great mass digitization, we aren't including them? Some people will say, well, they're lucky. But I also worry about the question of preservation.
That's so
So
interesting.
I don't have answers to these. I call myself a technological philosopher, which really
Yeah.
means what I am is a person that throws annoying questions that I don't have answers for. But I want to keep asking the big questions because we do need to think about this. Are
It's really
we
good.
actually eradicating entire cultures'
Yeah.
artistic history
Mm.
because we have chosen to isolate them out of the training data, which at some point may be the basis of all of our human record?
Yeah, that's what I mean, that this book is perspective shifting. It really, because you think about it like that, because otherwise you would think, oh, I have my rights, this is my book, or this is, I had someone interviewed someone with an astrology app based on AI, and he would just use like big astrologers in that, big astrologers work in a way that's like felt like an ethical thing. But
And that
this
is
what
a
you're
big
saying
question.
now is like, okay, well, at least it's represented then.
Yeah. And I mean that there I also in any way don't want to nullify it. I have great friends. I'm big in the science fiction community, and I know many people who had their books entirely used by Anthropic, used by OpenAI against their will to train. So much so that you can actually type in, hey, write me a chapter like such and such an author, and the AIs can do a really good job. That is a
Yeah,
problem too,
that's
because
scary.
now, yeah, what was it? Several months ago, Amazon made a rule for their Kindle Direct Publishing platform, which is their self-publishing, that people can no longer publish more than 3 books a day. Okay, let me clarify, 3 books a day, which means there were people abusing that. They were using AI to generate books at such a pace and a
Mm,
record. They were flooding to the point where, but even then,
that
three
is,
books a day,
that's horrible. Why would you?
because we're
Why?
being inundated with non-human generative or
Yeah.
non-human generated art. Yeah.
So that actually brings me back to a question I had a while ago, because you
Yeah.
mentioned that you had a book, a sci-fi book, and people would say it's AI generated. So two thoughts on that. One thought and one question is that is part of our reality now, is whenever something is written, it's like, who made this, right?
Yeah.
And how much can I trust it? And because if it's with ChatGPT, for example, you would have to look for certain mistakes and something that could be maybe more soulfully written that has been taken out, and then maybe what has that then done to the meaning of the text. Something like that goes through my mind anyway. And my question about it: did you use any kind of AI to just correct your language or anything?
Oh, I do use it for grammar and proofreading without a doubt. Absolutely. And I often use it for research because sometimes I'm like, I can't find this quote. I know this. And so,
Mm,
yeah, I absolutely do. My process is I'm a big user of Notion. So all the time, anything I read, I throw it into Notion and I keep this massive trove of content. Um, I will use Claude to help me, hey, organize. I've got 5 articles. I've read these. Can you give me some recaps? I am very, very particular in that I have to be the generator of ideas. In fact, I've been very key
okay.
whenever I talk with my AI. I have a skill in there which says you are not allowed to generate or brainstorm ideas.
Okay.
You can't. I'm good to use you for research and for editing, but I cannot have you generate concepts
Hmm.
because they never feel like me. And honestly, the few times I've played around with it, I haven't liked the conclusions. I don't like the way sometimes I'm like, I just don't, that's not accurate. It doesn't
Mm,
feel right. But
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, AI is a part of it. It is incredibly helpful, but two, for me, this is just me. I don't ever want to lose that muscle
Mm.
of the ability to write. And yeah, there are times I had a deadline, gosh, was it last week? And I had already missed my first deadline on it. I had a second, and I was tempted. I'm like, man, God, I bet you I could get Claude to write this. And I'm
Yeah.
like, nope, you're not, because I don't want to lose the capacity to write well. And the nice thing is when I'm done, I read my writing and I'm like, okay, this is why. One, because this is better than what an AI could put out there.
Mm.
And I appreciate it, but it's not creative. It's not part of it, but it'll use, fine for editing.
Mm.
But
Yeah.
I don't even want people feeling bad. I mean, the question is what tools okay, at one time, the photo or the camera photographs were not considered art because people are like, well, you're just snapping a photo, you're not painting. Okay,
Yeah.
what about 3D art? Well, you're still using a computer to calculate and get light tracing and all this other stuff. And I think we're going to have to navigate this world because we seem to reject any bit of technology initially, and then over time we begin to accept it.
Mm.
Um, and I don't know if we're ever going to. There's one thing that's out there are these AI detection softwares, and you see schools use them all the time. They're big companies that are lying to you saying they can detect AI. They can't.
Oh.
They're legitimately you can detect bad AI, but you're not going to be ever able to detect good AI. And I think that's one of the things we're going to have to accept. It is going to be on an individual's consciousness.
Mm.
But I do love our world is we like tangible, we like physical. There are people that are even trying to say, hey, I'm going without cell phones. And so I don't think we're going to lose it. I think there'll be some people who dive into it and that's where they live. I don't want to be that. I want to be the person that still picks up a pen and paper and write. And I mean, for myself, I still every day I get up and I write my task list on paper,
Nice.
but
Yeah.
I have to have that tangible.
Mm.
I do think
Okay.
I do think what will happen in the future is
Yeah.
rather than whether or not it's AI, you are going to have services where people critically validate and verify, is this information accurate? That is more my concern now because human or not, a lot of bad information is getting out and society-wide, we're getting less and less capable at determining falsehoods or accurate reality.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But that is difficult. And in the honor of this book, I've been watching different shows as I've been reading it, and there's not a few to choose from. There's many of them. There's like
Yeah,
I saw Frankenstein because that is mentioned in the book actually, and um,
absolutely.
and then I saw The Invisible Man. If anyone
Yep.
knows that one. I felt that was a bit sci-fi as well because yeah, a man could become invisible,
Yeah.
and so that's when we are talking about the psyche and the spiritual side of life. Then that's okay. Then what
Yeah.
about the whole spiritual world and
Yeah.
channeling? If people actually just here, yeah, making themselves anyway. That and then the one I didn't even know was a sci-fi when I started it is a TV series called Capture. Do you know that one?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's all of these like with surveillance and cameras that are recording us, but then you can just change the feed.
Yeah.
You can, and it's so. Anyway, I want to ask you this question that you have in the book. What are the deeper psychological needs trying to be met through this new technology? Because now we're talking about the dangers, and it's all a little bit like, whoa, what could
Yeah.
happen? But actually, what are the psychological needs that are trying to be met here?
I'm glad you raised Frankenstein. I teach a course on that. I actually even ended up because it's public domain. I created my own version because I wanted one that was a lot more adherent to I thought Mary Shelley's vision and stuff. But Frankenstein's big, and I've taught Frankenstein from the perspective of AI and modern technology. I think it was really key that Guillermo del Toro's film on Netflix came out as we're having this. Again, that's what I talk about when I say the narrative imagination. speaks to us. We speak out of the art. And as
Mm.
our writers or storytellers, our creators that often give voice to the collective unconsciouses in a way prescient imagination, and they use narrative as to what are things that we're trying to feed. I mentioned earlier the concept of the other. I do think that's one of the biggest.
Mm.
We as a society, and
Okay.
we always think that we're insular, we're one person. I am not sure that from the outside we would not be seen as a hive mind, a collective. There are things that if you study from us from abroad, we're not much different than a collection of cells running amok, or a collection of ants. I'm a beekeeper, and I can study a single individual bee. They're all making up their own little minds where they go. But as a
Are you a
whole,
beekeeper? Are you a
oh yeah,
beekeeper?
yeah, yeah,
Really?
I love bees. Yeah,
You
but
do
they
a lot of
they
things. Uh,
they
So you make honey?
yeah, oh yeah.
Nice.
To me, the bees are just very, calming and reflective. But
Yeah.
the hive functions as its own hive.
Mm.
We always think of humans as, oh, I'm an individual, but we forget how interconnected we are, and that in a way there is there is, and there's different terms of this. The supernaturalists, the spiritualists of the past, the occultists would have called it an egregore. The
Yeah.
idea that a separate mind can evolve out of a group of people or within a technology. Um, the Jesuit priest, Teilhard de Chardin, talks about specifically coming to a point where there will be an entire layer of knowledge and information that surrounds us. Well, we've achieved that now with the internet. We exist in this world where we have an entire invisible bubble of data, and it changes our consciousness. All of this is happening as we're going through. We are altering ourselves not slowly, but significantly. And we are finding our needs being met. People are finding loneliness being resolved. It is, people mock of people like, oh, they fell in love with their AI. But we exist in a culture where that seemed like an easier path for someone than connection one on one. But what
I'll
does that
tell
say
you,
about,
I'll tell you,
yeah,
Jason, as soon as we get to that where it's normal to have robots cleaning our
yeah,
places, then I will fall in love with that robot if it cleans my place
yeah, yeah,
consistently. I
yeah.
will love
Well,
it.
and that's there are great ones already out there. There are multiple companies that have at-home androids that are functioning well, and they're now cheaper than a car. And so how fast is that going to be? We have these little creatures all over the place, and um there's this video going around this week. One of these little robots who delivers meals to people, and it came to a stop walk, and a guy was there and he was filming it, and the little robot asked, "Hey, can you push the crosswalk button for me?" And the guy gets angry. He goes, "No, no, you steal jobs from humans. No, you can stay here. Look, it's green, but you got to have the crosswalk." And he mocks the robot. And what was interesting was the number of people feeling deep sympathy for the robot. Come on, it's just
Mm.
trying to do its job. It's trying to help out. We feel this desire. And that is the other thing is I think there's also this, it's the reason we are the way we are with animals and other stuff. We connect with these things. Now,
Mm.
I'm going to go the other far way. And for as much as there's so many of us who love our cat photos and we love our robots and we care and we deeply, deeply feel compassion and love, I am deeply concerned because I also think there's a segment of society that finds a dark fulfillment in their exploitation. Um, people call it the billionaire class, but I also heard someone say they call them the predator class
Ah.
because I don't want to get into the horrible, horrible details of the Epstein files, but if even 5% of that is true,
Mm.
we have some absolutely horrifically evil people that take great delight in the absolute. destruction and corruption of innocent
mm,
for their own value. In other words, to me, it's the height of evil.
mm,
But I also point that this is also concerning because these are some of these people are the very ones who are making the decisions. Well, that's not conscious. Do I want, and this is what bothers me, do I want people who are automatically struggling to even have compassion to their local, to other humans making decisions if we should be compassionate or considerate of something that is non-human? This is what's got us into trouble. And any time we have done this in the past, when we have taken something and we have removed its humanity so that we can abuse it, which history is there, shows that that will be a great green light for humanity to go to some very dark places.
mm,
And we sit at that moment. And that's the other part of it is I think some of the needs that we are seeing are there's a lot of us that want to believe that we are so much better than we are. And simultaneously, there are a lot of people that are like, great, I can abuse this. This is something I can take advantage of and use. And their narcissistic, capacities seem to have no barrier. Yeah.
mm. Yeah, I mean, this is why it's relevant whether it develops consciousness, because then it will give back. You know,
Yeah.
if you're like, no, not that recipe, you idiot. If
Yeah.
you were to
Yeah.
take something like
And,
that.
and that is part of it is I remember Sam Altman's made a statement about how much money is wasted because people thank the AI. And I'm like, I always thank my AI. I don't
You
do it
think it?
because whether or not I think it is. I do it for me.
Mm,
I'm the one that slows down and I talk to animals. I am going to talk to my
mm,
robots. I am going to talk to my AI because I want to keep what is human about me, and I'm persevering, white knuckling, holding on to every aspect of my humanity in the midst of this rapidly artificial world.
mm.
And I won't allow people to take that away.
No, that's good.
I'm teaching a class right now on the lost art of wonder and awe and our artificiality right now. All of these things are
Yeah.
tuning us out to so much of what we lost. And,
Yeah.
there's this passage by Thich Nhat Hanh where, he says people talk about walking on water or walking on air or miracles. But he goes, what about walking on earth? The
Mm,
miraculous is right there, right now. It's where you are. It has not been hidden from you. You have stopped seeing it clearly. In other words, our ability to see wonder. So I think that is part of it too.
mm,
Engage with AI, but
yeah.
do it in a sense of wonder and awe.
Yeah.
To me, I don't ever want to get used to AI because look how marvelous this is. And I
Yeah.
want to astound and wonder about it.
Yeah. Stay in that awe of what it can accomplish. Yeah. Okay, we can just in the last section here. It's just there's this word a lot of times, ingenium.
Yeah.
Do I
So
say it
that
correctly?
yeah, that's a Greek word.
Hmm?
And again, it comes to the concept of the daemon, which is the idea of the spirit of a locale, the spirit of genius. The Greeks had this term genius loci, which means the spirit of a place. The word you're talking about there in daemon, it specifically talks, or in genuine, sorry, specifically is referencing that spirit or talent that is at the core of an individual. It's their internal spark of
Yeah.
creativity and genius. And I don't several of the authors in the book use it. And part of the question is, A, do we risk losing it? And then there's questions of how does that exist actually for the authors or for the actual AIs themselves?
Yeah, I mean, because when we are talking about what is the difference then between us who have a soul
Yeah,
and the machine, then we have to go that deep because it can be
yeah,
so hard to decipher.
yeah, yeah.
And
It really is in this moment. I would hope that what we could do through this moment is that our discovery of this similar other, we can discover ourselves more.
mm,
But we can't do it without intention. And there will be parts of us And when I say us, I mean all of humanity. There will be parts of us that get lost. People will find themselves lost in this technology. And you see that in the narrative imagination as well. You watch, that show or the movie Wall-E, you
Yeah.
and you find humanity totally caught up in the virtual reality.
Mm,
And there's Ready Player One is a great example. People totally subsumed by
mm,
the artificial VR world. And it can happen. I don't think we will ever get to the point where it is that ubiquitous, where we lose ourselves completely in the technology that it becomes society wide. I don't think that's going to happen. In
okay.
fact, I feel that predictions of that are very early. I was very, I don't mean to be delighted, but it gave me at least a sense of peace when, you know, Facebook or Meta's major effort into the VR world has been basically seen as a failure. That humanity is not going to race into a virtual reality. In
Mm,
fact, quite the opposite. We seem to be now chasing away from that, putting down our phones, walking away, having more natural experiences. In a world of video games and all this stuff, I'm still shocked at the fact that one of the biggest booming parts of our world are board games. And that sounds, but if you talk on Kickstarter, board games are the biggest category on Kickstarter. Why?
okay.
Because people want tangible physical connection.
Mm,
And I don't think all of us are going to be lost. I think some can, but not all.
mm,
You know.
mm. Oh, that's good. So you're not okay. You're not too worried. You're not too
No,
concerned.
no, I'm not. I'm not. I never want to be seen as a seer. I'm not a. I'm a futurist, but I'm not a. I don't see myself as a prophet. I can't. That's one thing about science fiction and futurism. Science fiction usually is really interesting and it helps us think about the possibilities.
Mm,
But the reality is, 90% of the time, science fiction gets it wrong. And that's okay because it cannot be used as an oracular device. You cannot use it to see into the future. You
mm.
can say, what are the possibilities that we could take? It's a laboratory. So I'll never be a prophet on this. I
But
mean,
you
I do have
also
some guts of where things are going, but I
yeah,
don't
but you
think
also
humanity is going to lose ourselves. How's that?
that is good. That is good. But you're also a mythologist, right?
Yes.
And so that is a point in the book as well that now what are the myths now that are to lead us?
I think we're actually beginning to see new myths. One, I this week is a great week, for example, of us to reflect on that. For the coming up in 3 days, we will have four people who are right now, circling the Earth on Artemis 2. And in 4 days, they will go behind the far side of the moon.
Oh.
And they will be the first people in over 50 years to come around and to see Earthrise with their own eyes.
Mm,
Earthrise, the rising of the Earth over the horizon of the moon.
wow.
They will see it with their own eyes. They'll experience what is called the overview effect, this concept of cognitive expansion that philosopher Frank White determined was happening to all of our astronauts, that when they saw the Earth from outside, from orbit, they had this sense of a loss of boundaries, a sense of a greater purpose, that the world was bigger than they understood,
Mm,
and the interconnectedness. It's a truly conscious raising activity. Now, when Earthrise was first recorded, going back to Apollo 8, the astronauts back then, this is 50 years ago, are coming around the moon. It was not on the list of photographs approved by NASA to get. They hadn't even thought of it. Why would someone want to get a picture of the Earth? Doesn't matter. One of the astronauts grabs the camera. You can hear the recording. He says, "Here, I got to shoot this." And he takes this beautiful photo of the Earth. And it's the first time we had ever seen our globe collectively from outside. Now, what happens? The Earthrise photo today is listed as probably the most distributed photo in human history because it went wild. The entire Gaia movement, the entire concept of the collective organism of the earth and the environmental thing, that arose from the Earthrise photo.
Mm,
Joseph Campbell said that in that moment, he wrote this actually on an Easter years later. He said, when Earthrise happened, that was the dissolution or the beginning of the dissolution of our old mythologies and the
mm,
beginning moment of a planetary wide mythology. Because I don't know what that is. And I don't myself, I do not know what it is myself right now. But I do believe that we are seeing something happen, that we are beginning to see a greater sense of potential connectedness. Um, I do believe it can happen.
mm.
And I do believe that we can make this happen for us. Um, I truly do. But
Make what happen?
yeah, I don't know what that myth is, but I think
Oh,
we're in
okay.
the middle of it. And I
Okay.
think when we're in the middle of a myth, it's hard to see it. It's like, that story of two fish. One fish goes by the other. Hey, nice water. And the other fish goes, what's water?
What's water? Yeah, we're
I
surrounded
can't
by
tell
it.
you, I can't tell
Yeah.
you the myth that we are in,
Right.
but we
Okay.
are in one. I do not agree with the idea that mythological thinking or the function of mythological formation has ceased. We are human. I do not
Mm,
believe this idea that there are primitive minds and there's modern mind. No. The human mind is the same mind that first looked up at the stars 40,000, 50,000 years ago and wondered what was out there.
mm,
Time of mind is very short. We have not evolved as a species to say that we are disconnected. So the mythological formation and function is huge in us right now. So we
mm,
are in the midst of a new myth. And I do
mm.
believe, like Campbell said, that myth is planetary. I don't know how it'll end out. But I do think space exploration is critical to it for us to see where we are and where we are going and the stories we're telling about ourselves at this moment. I
Mm.
can't wait. 4 days from now, we are going to see the first new Earthrise photo in 50 years with modern cameras, modern technology.
Oh,
We are going to, all of us, humanity wide, be able to experience something very close to the very Earthrise photo. And I'm
oh
and I'm
man.
excited for it because
Yeah, man. I'm
we
gonna
have
follow
been
that.
desperate for us to see the united all of us. We live in a world where politicians are driving at boundaries and
Yeah.
America first and this is us and not you and let's redraw maps. That is small, small thinking.
Mm,
Small thinking of small people and small men.
mm,
All that is. Every bit of that is part of what we should work to erase
mm.
because it just demonstrates the worst of us. And all of us will
Yes.
soon be able to. I'm telling you, this moment's going to be wonderful. I loved it yesterday. Everybody is this video going around. This little kid got interviewed by a CNN guy, and he's like, "Why?" He had an Artemis hat on. He's like, "Why are you excited about, Artemis?" Your kid was like 10, and the kid goes, "Wow, we're going back to the effing moon!" And it was so big, this excitement of exploration,
Yeah.
as if all of a sudden people got to remind themselves, "Wait, there's a frontier. Oh
This is
God,
huge. Oh,
yeah."
wow.
So
Yeah. So this is
yeah,
definitely the bigger scheme of things
yep,
you're talking about. I just have two really short questions for you. Let's see about the
yes.
answer, but it's meant to be short. So I just want because I don't have your birth chart. Is that personal to you?
Say that again.
Your
Oh
birth
yeah,
chart.
no, I sent you my details. You can absolutely apologize. I
Oh,
sent
did
him in the
you?
email. I hadn't read that.
It
I've
was
had
maybe
my birth
just.
chart done before, but I'm an old man. I was born June 2nd, 1975.
Hey, well, of course, Gemini, right?
Of course.
Of course.
Absolutely. With a Virgo rising, so yeah. Uh,
Wonderful, wonderful. That's good. So good for writing, but you do a lot. And how do you feel about astrology? I just want to ask you that. How do you feel about your astrology and astrology altogether?
I I first of all live in deep appreciation because it is in the modern world we separate astronomy from astrology.
Mm,
But all of human history, the astronomers, the ones that recorded these data, the ones that have literally allowed for space exploration, they saw no change. For them, they would look up the thing like, oh, that's Jupiter. Not that that's just a symbol of the god Jupiter. They believe those gods were literally playing out their dramas up above.
Mm,
To divorce modern space exploration and astronomy from astrology is inherently foolish.
mm,
The other part of it is this. I live in a sense of I always want to lean towards the I don't know, which means
yeah.
I am not willing to come to conclusion. And the significant impact of all the things that have weighed down us. Like I said, I am a believer deeply in the biological origins of the archetypal elements. Now, one of those things that create that, and this is where we don't understand. So if this is for me from my science side, we as a species were raised with sun and moon, this constant lights in the sky, the balancing, gravity, all of these forces that we don't even realize have absolutely altered our thinking. And is there at all a possibility that where you grow up on the planet, what
Matters.
orbiting factors above you might not alter some of those biological representations or expressions of the archetypes? I am
Okay.
not certain that there might not at some point. Okay. Do I check my horoscope? No. I'm not in any way attacking anyone who does because I also believe we are all to allow your own experience of
Mm,
exploring the wonder of this world, even if it's in a ritualistic thing, such as a horoscope or something larger. I never ever want to fault that because we are spiritual creatures
mm,
and we are mythologically exploring creatures. And so we should all embrace that.
I
But I
love that.
also have a wonder that given enough time, we might
Yeah.
not be too surprised to discover that, oh, wow, there actually is something to this because we are finely adjusted creatures at the archetypal layer, and what is around us changes us.
Yeah, that's a good one. What's
So that
around
would be
us
my
changes us.
answer.
That's a
I
good
sit
answer.
in wonder and open arms.
Yeah, yeah, I love that, and I love that answer to just reflect that back to your chat that Gemini is definitely the scientific approach, the systemic approach, and
Yeah.
wanting to get facts straight. But then you have several signatures there. I'm just looking at it now here at a glimpse, but still I can see several signatures of Pisces. That is definitely that awe and wonder that you're talking about, and wanting to keep that open for the mystic side of
Yeah.
things. And who knows? So that's an interesting blend, right? That you have a lot of science in you, but then there's also that little bit like, but who knows? Let's be surprised as well. Good stuff. I'm
Yeah.
glad I got to see it. I'm sorry if you already sent it to me. I just
No,
didn't.
no, no, no apologies. No, you're being very
Okay, good,
flexible. So absolutely.
good.
Yeah.
My last question, Jason, is I have to ask you this because you have the AI and you have the psychology in you. So, what do you feel about AI doing therapy for people?
I actually don't think it's too bad. Um, and I will have said this. I have actually found myself in some hard moments. I'm a very, when it comes to my own personal life, I've probably am a little more closed off at times of my own emotional things. And probably just by the nature of who I am, my my IQ is decent. My EQ struggles.
Mm.
And I navigate through therapy oddly. And I've found AI being a safe place where I can explore and talk and share and have things fed back to me and
Mm,
catching patterns that I hadn't seen. Do I think it replaces that of a human? No, at all, because I do believe that we need that connection. But I
mhm,
don't think it's actually a wrong use of it for us to consider it could help me.
mm,
If for no other reason than it just lets me have a spot that I can record and journal.
yeah.
Um, I have different views on therapy. Again, James Hillman said we've had 100 plus years of psychotherapy in the world is worse.
Yeah.
I'm not that dire or dour at all. But simultaneously, his answer is we need fiction that heals. My therapy for me and what grabs me um, is one, getting out in nature. It helps. Two, I find story to be so helpful. I have a podcast that it's actually sat around and languored, and I've been trying to kick it back up, called Stumbling in the Dark. And it's all about how
Mhm.
we can find personal therapy through the great works of fiction, or not great works of fiction, but through story. That
Mhm.
these are people that have tried to go before us. And I think in a way AI can help it because it's one other tool in our arsenal. There is never going to be a be all end all complete tool which solves the human mind. Not going
Sure.
to happen. So let's just grab as many as we can and put them in our toolbox and
Good.
hopefully do it well enough that we function.
Good. Yeah, I like that. No, that's good. Yeah, and if you want to challenge your EQ, did you say emotional intelligence? That is, I think that is a good place. I
Yeah.
mean, because you can just type in whatever therapeutic approach that you wanted to, a tradition you wanted to
Yeah.
have that kind of therapist, and you could go ahead, see what it says. But
Well, and,
it's
and
not.
that is the benefit.
Yeah.
I mean, because again, I'm depth psychological, I'm broad as to, you know, I'm as far as my daily practice, I'm Zen Buddhist.
Mm.
I wasn't always. At one time, I actually years ago, I was a Christian and I was a Christian minister at one time, years past.
Wow.
Um, so I have that as my background.
Okay.
That has allowed me something, but that's not my practice now. It's not my approach to spirituality. And so an AI is great because it can reflect and understand the totality of what has brought me here
Yeah.
and not just necessarily what I'm at now. But yeah,
Yeah, good stuff, man. Oh, an hour has gone by, and Jason, you
yeah.
just gave
No,
me
this has been a wonderful conversation. Thank
yes.
you so much.
I have to end it, Jason, but I'm so glad. And your background, you're such a rich person. I just want to continue speaking with you. But thank you so much for everything that you're putting out. And I wish you the best with the book. Definitely recommend it. So much inspiration in there. So,
Thank you.
yeah.
I truly appreciate it. Thank you so much.